All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome back.
We're not gonna have any introduction music.
Well,
Oh, there we go.
there we go.
There we go.
This is how we start a pod. Doing a little bit of intro music, feeling pretty good. Interesting conversation today we have planned. First of all, before we get into today, I do want to state clearly that we are not medical experts.
Nope, not at all.
I have done zero further education in virology or immunology
Or biology.
or
Or
biology.
chemistry.
None of it.
None of it.
We are just making observations on life via our own personal experiences.
Fair enough. Absolutely.
I just wanted to be clear that we are not making any claims, that we do not, YouTube, if you're watching, if you're listening, we are not claiming to know the truth
Nope. We are talking about our observations of the world around us.
and doing our duty to ask some questions. I want to start today by actually first a couple announcements. Monday, Thursdays, every week, we have different episodes go up. Monday, we do the interviews with different guests. Thursdays, Free Thinking Thursdays, which you are watching today. If you want to come discuss the topics of our discussion, definitely come check out the Discord.
Hang out in our Discord chat.
So did you see this clip of Tony Fauci going around the hood of Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
Can we play that clip? I have that queued up.
Let's
play this
cue
clip.
that up, man.
So this clip was on a PBS documentary. I don't know if you know. So the PBS released
with the information that's been
a documentary, and this was a part of it. 11 million views.
Wow, 11 million?
Yeah.
given to us right now. So I'm not going to be lining up taking a shot or a vaccination for something
She is
that
the mayor
wasn't clear in the
of
first place. And
DC.
then you all create a shot in miraculous time. It takes years to create vaccination.
Well, it used to take years.
Okay, it used to.
You know how many years were invested in this approach? About 20 years of science to get us to be able
20
to
years
do it.
is not
quickly.
enough. And 9 months is definitely not
No.
enough for nobody to be taking no vaccination that you all came up with.
The only reason I'm talking to you right now, as close as we are, is that I've been vaccinated.
Right.
But if it allows thousands of people like you don't get vaccinated, you're going to let this virus continue to percolate in this country and in this world.
Something like the common flu then, right?
And not
Basically.
like
It's
the
much more
COVID.
serious than the flu. though.
Well, the flu kills a lot of people annually, too.
You know how many
Mosquitoes
people
is bad.
died of the flu the last year? I mean, not this year, virtually none, but the previous year, about 20 to 30,000. You know how many people have died from COVID-19 in the United States? 600,000 Americans.
Well, well, the number that you all giving that died, that's once again, that's you all's number.
You going to pass?
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Because when you start
She's not
talking
having
about
it. Look at her
paying people
face.
to get
She's over this
vaccinated,
guy. She was
when
over
you
this
start
guy the
talking
first time he
about
opened his mouth.
incentivizing things to get people vaccinated, there's something else going on with that. Something else going on with that.
It is something going
Yeah.
on with
Something
it.
else
You're
going
right.
on
But
with
I'm
it.
glad millions of people like me and most everybody here didn't get an. You know what their incentive was? Protecting their health and protecting the city. But I won't keep you anymore.
All right, let me dig on you before I leave.
Y'all campaign is about fear. It's about inciting fear in people. You all attack people with fear. That's what this pandemic is. It's a fear. It's fear, this pandemic. That's all it is.
This
Oh,
guy,
Look at him spritzing his hand with hand sanitizer.
I mean, he was
like,
too close to the people.
Yeah, he was too close to the dirty garbage.
Yeah.
So, like, come on. You're gonna show the editors must have been like, this is so opportune for us to show an elitist, image of Fauci spritzing his hand with hand sanitizer because he just had to hang out with the plebes. He
Yep.
just hang out.
Get the dirt off
Yeah,
me.
he just had to hang out. Yeah, all the stank of just regular human beings, man. He had to get that off of him, bro.
So this guy deserves an award.
Totally.
Crushed it.
He basically
Good for him.
He basically told them exactly to their faces what everyone else was thinking.
Because they showed up with, Tony Fauci, with Letitia James, I think that's her name.
I wouldn't know. Probably another useless mayor.
Yeah, mayor of DC, and all those cameras and all those people, and a lot of people would have felt really nervous.
Oh, for
showing
sure.
up like that.
Oh, for sure.
Probably would not have been able to speak their mind.
Too much
And
pressure.
this guy was like, I'm not having it.
Exactly.
Good for him.
Good for him.
Good for him. He's, 11.5 million views right now. Good for this guy.
I love the fact that he talks about how there's no way that they could have created let's just say a miracle drink, a miracle drink in such a short amount of time. And Mr. Fauci says, which is like the worst excuse you could ever say. It's like, well, if we have 9 women focus on making this baby, then it'll increase the chances. It increases the speed of making the baby. No, that's not how it works. You have 1 woman, 1 baby. It takes 9 months. You can't cook the baby faster or make the baby faster by adding more women. And so for him to say we have put 20 years of research into this miracle drink that we've created, and all the amalgamated history and experience of all these scientists, we smashed it all into 9 months, and that's enabled us to make this a miracle drink. That's a very poor excuse. That's a very poor example. It doesn't work like that. You can't have 9 women make a baby in 1 month. It doesn't work like that.
I did some numbers research. Pfizer, their revenue prior to 2021 was about $50 billion a year, give or take.
$50 billion a year.
Last year, they did over 100.
Ooh,
Oh,
not bad.
pretty good year.
It's a pretty good year.
Pretty good year.
What happened? What happened last year that where they could double their profits?
Okay. Another interesting idea is that in China, they did not allow the Pfizer vaccine. You cannot get the Pfizer mRNA vaccine in China.
Didn't they manufacture their own magic drink?
They did, and they did the traditional vaccine route. And the whole world said, oh, China, they don't know what they're doing. Their vaccines aren't effective. They went the traditional route, not the mRNA route. And you would think, oh, that makes sense. Pfizer's a U.S. company, and China doesn't want the U.S. company to do, business in China. Except I've been to China. I've seen the Pfizer facility. It's enormous.
I'm sure it's high tech too.
They do something like $10 billion a year in business in China. So a company and a country that does $10 billion a year, which is like 10 to 20% of their entire revenue, is done in their country. But they didn't allow their vaccine to be there. Interesting. It's interesting that China, with this huge population of people, would not allow the largest vaccine manufacturer in the world, who already does business in that country, to use their vaccine.
I just don't know enough about their policies, whether it's an anti kind of American policy consideration, or whether there was some sort of competitor that could manufacture it internally in China, and that they just wanted to keep it in home.
I don't know, but I can't imagine it's an anti-American thing, because again, they do $5 to $10 billion a year in revenue with Pfizer annually, and they have enormous facilities there. So it's not like we're not going to let Pfizer into our country. They're already there.
They're already there.
Correct. They just chose not to use them.
Maybe they knew something about the magic drink that we don't know.
I don't know, but they chose to go the more traditional route, which is fascinating.
So I'm curious as to whether the traditional route was more effective than what we saw here stateside. Is there a compare and contrast there?
We do know that the mRNA vaccine that most of us have taken has not prevented COVID. Not to say that it doesn't work for certain people, but the efficacy is not as high as we were told. We were told 99%.
Yeah.
It's not 99%.
It's not.
I know a lot of people. I know more people that have had COVID after taking the vaccine than I know of people that.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. So the narrative isn't really holding up, is what we're hearing these days.
Correct.
And there's a lot of shuffling of the of the deck chairs on the sinking ship, let's say, that's happening right now. And from what I've heard of most recently is that they found out that it was spread by some sort of raccoon dog.
Which is,
Did you hear about that?
I did hear the
you hear about
raccoon
that?
dog theory.
I mean, it's like they're just picking shit out of a hat right now. They're just like, man, the public isn't believing this narrative. Let's choose something else. Hey, blue-haired sheepdog. Do you
That's
have
your fault.
Do you have an idea? And he's like, well, what about a raccoon dog? And they're like, oh fuck,
That's a good one.
Maybe they'll eat this one up. Yeah, exactly. So apparently the virus has spread, or the magic drink. The virus spread through a raccoon dog in the wet market. Is the new
That's
story?
what they say.
Is that what they're saying right now?
I mean, I don't think anyone
Like,
of any expertise is saying that. It just seems something like one person said it somewhere, the news picks it up, and then another news outlet references this news outlet to say that's their reference.
Yeah.
And then another news outlet says, well, I'm going to link it to here, and therefore I'm not making this crazy claim.
I think what makes it even more unbelievable is the specificity in which they come out with these examples. It's like, how, okay, you did all this research and you're sure it came from a raccoon dog.
Raccoon dog.
Like guys, let's elevate just one level higher. It doesn't matter if it was a bat or a sheepdog or a raccoon dog or a worm. Like, we know it came out of this lab. We know it came out of this area.
Allegedly.
Allegedly came out of this area. There's, let's just say, pretty substantial evidence, coincidental evidence that states that it's coming from this area.
We are trying our best to have this conversation without saying anything that will trigger us to get banned. I think we want to be clear.
Nothing super egregious, I guess.
Correct. We are doing our best to speak logically and thoughtfully about this very sensitive issue without, and if we don't be careful on how we choose our words, this conversation will never get out there. And that's the sad truth about what we're talking about.
Yeah, and we want this conversation to go out there as an example of what other people are talking about behind closed doors.
Correct.
There's you and I are not having this conversation as some novel idea that no one's thought about.
Correct.
Millions of people are having this conversation right now around, okay, why are they talking about all this uber specificity of it's coming from a raccoon dog when in reality they're just obfuscating the real issue, which is you guys potentially poisoned the entire world with a magic drink.
So I think it's really interesting that we're in a place right now where there's a lot of negative news about the U.S. and China relations. Everyone's talking about World War III, things like this, right? So if there was ever a time for them to like, it came from the lab, this would be it, because we're already going into a state of animosity. But for some reason, they don't want to, which I find extremely concerning because, again, if there was ever a time to blame the lab, this would be it.
Right.
But yet they don't want to do it.
They're pulling back a little bit.
Which means possibly the U.S. had a hand in what happened over there. Therefore, if they were to point to the laboratory, that it would somehow come back also. And therefore, everyone's kind of has a common goal here, which is sheepdog. Raccoon dog, I'm sorry.
Raccoon dog. Well, I think you're not wrong. I think there's a lot of political and economic interests that are tied to China. And so the big wigs and the elites, or the ones who have money and power and influence, are saying, look, you can't turn over this rock too much here, right? There are interests that I have, and you guys can't go into this, you can't go into that. But speak on this topic, from other things that I've heard, Matt, is that a lot of this is military. Like a lot of this whole entire thing was a military operation. Again, we don't know what we're talking about. Could be conjecture, could be just misinformation.
And which is what the guy Miles Guo was saying, right? Who happened to be arrested this week and apartment blown up with all his devices and Faraday cages.
We need to stay on track with that because I want to know what happens. I want to know what happens
I
later.
want to know how that story ends.
Exactly.
I'm so curious.
Exactly.
But yes, that's exactly what he was saying, that it was a military operation.
Which is a problem. To have the military being the ones who are leveraging and experimenting on and creating these types of bioweapons, these types of viruses and magic magic juice, right? It's a problem if the military industrial complex, which we know a lot about here in America because we are the world's terrorists. Oops, get it censored there. No, but like we're so good at the military stuff. So to have military being in leading this type of research and these types of initiatives and projects is really dangerous because the military isn't there for public health.
Yeah.
That's not their goal.
Their goal is to make money.
Money under the guise and auspices of defense, of national defense. Right. So this is a problem if they're going to be using this for military reasons, military initiatives, and military projects. And so are we being experimented on? The answer is absolutely yes, because we've been experimented on as Americans for decades, man. Just look it up.
So speaking of the military, can you click that article that says military on it? It just happened.
the obvious article that says military?
Myocarditis diagnosis spiked in military in 2021. New data shows.
That is interesting. That myocarditis would spike in military personnel. And what's also interesting to note is that myocarditis is also spiked in the general population as well, from what I understand.
Diagnosis of myocarditis, a form of heart inflammation, jumped 130.5%.
Okay, let's just sit on that as it stands. Diagnoses of myocarditis, a form of heart inflammation, jumped 130.5%. Period, full stop. Just sitting on that one sentence, that's even half a sentence there. I didn't even finish the sentence. That should cause alarm. What would cause a 130% increase in 1 year?
Of military age, young, healthy, fit men that were all required by law to do this.
To do the magic drink, the magic drink.
We're not going to link the two, but we're going to state the obvious is that one happened and the other happened.
Yep.
If you want to connect the two, up to you.
Yeah.
However,
actually, if you
these
connect,
two things happened at the
the
same
two
time.
too seriously, you're just a bad person.
These two things happened at the same time.
Well, let's read this. All 4 of the COVID-19 vaccines authorized in the United States can cause myocarditis, according to U.S. officials.
Not according to data, according to the officials.
Not according to Matt Kim's podcast. Not according to Peter, the guest on Matt Kim's podcast. They're saying, according to U.S. officials, that these magic juices authorized in America cause myocarditis.
The CEO of Moderna was in Congress this week.
I'm blown away, Matt.
And they asked him, and he admitted that there was an increase in myocarditis amongst men that are vaccinated versus unvaccinated. He admitted to Congress that today. Didn't mean to, but he did.
Oh, did he say the silent part out loud?
He did. He just got bombarded with questions, and he just like blurted out. Was not his goal.
Usually that's my problem, saying the silent part out loud. But I mean, when you end up saying what should have stayed in your brain, and when you end up saying the silent part out loud, that's when people are just like, aha.
I remember in early last year. Do you remember when Bob Saget passed?
Yeah.
And they found him in his hotel room. They said that
It seemed suspicious.
that he had like these contusions in the back of his head that he just fell by himself, and that he was perfectly healthy leading to. And it was big news, and he fell, and they said, we're going to release the autopsy of what happened in 3 months. And everyone want to know, why did Bob Saget die? And I thought it was really weird that they didn't want to release the autopsy for 3 months. Like, why does it take 3 months to do an autopsy? It takes like a week, not even. They said 3 months, maybe hoping that the news cycle dies on his death. 3 months later, they came out and said, oh, the judge blocked the autopsy report. Can't talk about it. Cannot tell people why and how
So
he died.
when did he die?
He died in January
Of what year?
2021. 2022.
2022.
Last year.
So last year. So that would be an interesting timing in terms of, let's just say, a massive rollout of magic juice.
Correct.
And we are seeing an increase in sickness, and we are seeing an increase of deaths. And it is only a matter of time before some influential and famous individuals finally kick the can, where because they're famous and they're influential and they're like movie stars or, you know, actors like this,
America's dad.
the public is interested. The public has a public interest in this influencer, in this person, this celebrity, this person of renown. And so they want to know why. And so why would a judge want to hide the results and reasoning as to why the beloved father of Full House has passed? Why would that be?
Well, they said during the course of the autopsy and death investigation, the medical examiner's office and sheriff's office created graphic videos and photos of Saget's body, as well as audio recordings. And these are prohibited by state law from being released publicly. He just fell. Why are there, number one, so many graphic videos? What's graphic about that? Number two, audio recordings? What were you recording? They found him passed alone by himself. What was the audio on this? But yet, that's the excuse to not release the autopsy. It doesn't make sense.
You just completely confused me. And I just read this. It said Saget died from an accidental blow to the head. What they're doing is they're creating psychological bias there by saying it's accidental blow. You know, we don't know. But anyway, Saget died from what seemed to be a blow to the head, likely from a fall backward, according to medical examiner. The autopsy report showed that Saget had an abrasion on his scalp, a fracture at the base of his skull, fractures around his eye sockets, fractures plural, bruises plural around the brain, and bleeding between the brain and tissue covering the brain. A toxicology analysis didn't show any illicit drugs or toxins in Saget's body. So from that paragraph right there, it sounds like he got his ass beat.
Except he didn't. He just fell.
That's what they say. But if you just fall, Will, when was the last time that you fell and not only did you fall, but you rolled around while you were falling, breaking multiple things in your body? Like
all the time. I did it this morning.
this morning, like it's fine. I find it hard to believe with this type of narrative that you would fall and you would find abrasions, fractures, multiple bruises. That seems like overkill for a fall, doesn't it?
So let's
seems like he fell and someone rolled him.
So let's fast forward to this year, and the Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin.
Yes.
Got hit, went into cardiac arrest, and he went down. He survived, but it was very concerning because the whole world was able to watch that happen live.
Yes.
He eventually came out. He was on a interview with Michael Strahan. And in the interview, they asked him, what did the doctors tell you the reason was? And he said, I can't talk about it.
After one of the most longest and awkward pauses ever televised in human history.
He said, I can't talk about it. And now this guy who can't talk about it is all of a sudden on Dancing with the Stars. He's all over the news doing all these other things. He's now famous. No one heard of him before. I mean, if you watch football, you knew who he was. But now he's on Dancing with the Stars. It's like, don't talk about it, and you get this.
It's interesting you say that. That reminds me, what's that one quarterback who was never really a good quarterback, and ended up starting the whole let's kneel at the national anthem. What was his name?
Colin Kaepernick.
Colin Kaepernick. So that seems very reminiscent of Colin's rise to fame in that he wasn't that good as an athlete, but he ended up adding in politics to his narrative, adding in politics to his persona and the optics and perception around him. And that, if I think I'm getting this right, his political affiliation and his political pandering is the reason why he's now more famous than ever.
You say this, and now you get the fame.
Yes.
Trade-off. It's fair.
It's a fair trade if you understand what you're selling, if what you're giving up, what you're compromising, maybe your soul. But let's go back to this Damar Hamlin, because I don't know if everyone's seen it. Maybe we should. Will, if you want to bring up that tape, like the awkward pause. I believe now. I'm going to play the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, find Damar Hamlin and Michael Strahan
Interview.
interview.
I feel like his silence in that awkward pause is his way of making peace with the dissonance that he has in his head. Does that make sense? It's like he's I'm not saying this, guys, in negative, but just understand my point when I say it. He sold his soul. And when you sell your soul for 20 shekels, right? When you sell your soul, it's hard to fake the physical effects of that, especially if someone puts you on the spot.
That's something I don't really want to get too deep into.
Oh, come on. Get out of here. Come on, bro. Come on. You're not going to pause like that. Search. He literally... Hold on. Pause it for a second. Let me say something. That brother literally searched his soul for a good 6 seconds.
Should I say it or not?
Yeah, they're like, tell us about what the doctor said. And he literally went through his entire soul. And he searched his soul. And he came up with somebody's... let's just say, incentivized me deeply not to say anything. And you could almost see him wrestling with the dissonance of that decision. But yet, as the time is ticking away, you are actually revealing to us, Damar Hamlin, the realities of your compromise, is the way that I see it. I think that pause is admission of compromise. Is that fair?
I think we all know what he meant. I think you can read between the lines just by seeing that moment.
Ask me the question. Ask me the question that he asked.
I don't remember what the question.
The question was, what did the doctors say about your? Say it to me.
What did the doctors say about your accident?
They said that once I got hit, that it was just the most oddest timing in human history. That it was hit right as I was my heart was beating and my heart stopped. But then they got it back together. Thanks so much to the coaches. Thanks so much to my athletic doctors. They brought me back together. Next question. If that is the answer, there was no hesitation in my right. That's what he should have said.
Yeah, and if he was trained to, that's what he would have said.
Yeah,
He was trained to say that. He was PR trained to say exactly that. But yet, even then, he hesitated.
Yeah,
because he knew.
He wasn't even
allegedly.
I'm making it up, and I sound more fluent than he did because he had these ums and pauses, and it was just like, well, I'm fighting this dissonance and conflict in terms of my entire soul. I mean, and so there you have to ask. For me, this begs the question: what does his family and close friends think about him? Like they're not stupid. They saw the pause. They see the inside story probably a little bit more than everyone else. They hear the rumblings internally in their familial network, right? I mean, wouldn't there be someone within his network or maybe a cousin that's like, fuck this shit, Damar? Why you doing us? Why are you doing us wrong like this?
So I get this statement from a lot of people, which is, why do you bother talking about the things that you talk about? You can't make a difference. It doesn't matter because you can't change it. Might as well focus on what we can do, which is try to make some money, try to survive, take care of our families. This is what we can focus on. Why do you focus on these things that you cannot make an impact on? Fair question.
Well, what's your answer? Answer your own question.
And what I tell them is that if people don't speak out, every society that has failed happens because the people who could have spoken out didn't speak out. People, I hate using this analogy because it's such a tough analogy. The reality is that most people that were in Nazi Germany did not believe that they should kill all the Jews. Most people did not. Yeah. It's a select few that did. The people who contributed to the campaign, maybe. They were just contributing to the campaign. Yeah. They saw what was going on. They didn't want to speak up because it doesn't affect them. So these things happen because people do not speak out.
So what you're saying is that the only thing that needs to happen for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing.
Exactly. Stay home.
So let me ask you a raw question. If you were Damar Hamlin and you collapsed in the field, and you go to the hospital, and the doctors do their battery of tests on you, and they give you the real deal. And when they're giving you the real deal, the raw deal of what actually happened, they're also accompanied by some men in suits. And these men in suits are saying, yes, this is what happened to you. However, here's a check for your silence. Would you take it?
So you are assuming that the doctors that he actually met with told him the truth.
I believe the doctors did tell him the truth because that's what they're medically obligated to do. But then there was, let's just say, allegedly, not that I was there, some men in suits that were also, let's just say, giving him very direct counsel as to what his results might actually mean for the larger public and larger narrative.
So the reason I wanted to have this conversation today is because a very close friend of mine, a very close friend to me and Will, that we know, that we love, and we care about very much. 2 or 3 days ago, he was eating a sandwich with his wife at the island, felt dizzy, fell, hit his head on the thing, hit his head on the island, knocked out 10, 15 seconds. Just happened. No reason why. He's okay now. We think. But he just fell. No reason. Went to the emergency room. They did a little bit of testing, etc. And they told him, oh, it's probably because you had a reaction to the gas bubble in your body from the soda. They blamed the fucking soda. I don't know why. I can't say what the reason is. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea.
Come on, Matt.
I do not remember a time in my life where young, healthy men were just falling. I just don't remember. And maybe it's because we're a little bit older and we see a little bit more. And that would be the rational thought. Except then you talk to people that are a little bit older and then they say that they don't remember this either, in which case that whole theory goes out the door. I had another friend who his father, very good friend of mine, his father was super healthy. I saw him maybe 2 weeks prior. He was in a sauna. He was at the spa, and he just fell and passed. No, and they said it was
Passed.
He was maybe 60, in the 60s. He had absolutely zero history of any heart issue, none whatsoever. But after he passed, they said, oh, it was heart. Okay. Him being a good son does not want to go through the process of an autopsy, doing all this, right? Like, it's your father. You want him to rest. Yeah. You don't want to go through all that.
I understand.
Right? Like, how do you make that decision? Like, okay, I'm going to make my social and political stance now, and I'm going to tear apart my dad. You're not going to do it. No, I don't think anyone would do it. But it just happened. And I've been searching my memory and my catalog of experiences to see if this has ever happened to me before. And I don't remember any time in my history of my life, in the thousands of people that I've met along the way that have just fallen, not even died suddenly, right? That have just fallen suddenly without any reason. Yep. It's one thing if they have a heart attack, you can prove a heart attack, right? You know it happened. If you have a stroke, you know a stroke happened. If someone faints because they were dehydrated or whatever, you can show that happened. If it was low blood pressure, you can do some blood tests and you find out it was low blood pressure.
Yep.
I don't remember a time in our lives where people are falling, you go to the doctor and they say, we don't know. And at the frequency that is happening.
Yeah. You're not wrong. I mean, I'm saddened to hear about your friend. I'm saddened to hear about the Ajashi, the older gentleman that was a friend of yours, that he died. I'm sad to hear that. It is my only thing that I can say in response to everything that you just said is I have experienced the exact same thing in just the last 2 years. More people have fallen over or died or had adverse effects, like life-changing effects to their life now. Like I have one family friend, let's just say, who now has just burning and tingling sensations all the time. Like she was completely healthy 3 years ago, let's say. And now she's constantly having, heat flashes, tinglings, just itchy, like burning skin type of stuff. And it only happened, interestingly enough, after she drank some magic juice, and tried this stuff. And I can tell you the worst occasion is I'm at the track every weekend. I'm racing with young kids all the time. And this will be as much as I say about it. But what affected me the most this last year was when I heard about one of the, just say, 10 to 12-year-olds that races with my son, who is no longer on this earth because he drank some magic juice, and a 11-year-old boy who is in absolute perfect health racing at 70 miles per hour through a track. And I've watched him for 2 years through the seasons do exceptionally well, and he is no longer with us. I just have never thought that I would ever see the day where a perfectly healthy individual, young kid, he's not even a tween yet, is now gone because of some interesting consumption that he had.
Timing. Interesting timing.
Like none of this should be happening.
I don't remember a time in our lives where this was a thing. I just don't.
So let me ask you this, because you brought up these two questions. I don't want to dig too much if it's too personal, but wouldn't that, you said, you wouldn't ever want to do an autopsy on your father. You just want to go in peace, rest in peace, move on, like peace. Totally understand. And you said that it could be a political stance by doing an autopsy and understanding. I question that. I don't think it's a political thing. I think I would do an autopsy if it was my dad. I don't know about you. Let me ask you the question. Would you do that if that was your father? Would you do an autopsy? Because the autopsies aren't that invasive. They don't ruin things. They just,
I mean, they're cutting open somebody, and
they have to bleed all the blood anyway. They have to cut sections anyway.
Yeah, and it's just it's the idea of allowing it that makes it really sensitive for people. I don't know if I could,
You wouldn't want to know, even though you would have suspicions, considering the timing and the coincidental nature of all of it.
And the reality is,
you wouldn't be curious enough.
Even if you did, what does that prove? And the other argument is, even if you do know the truth, what does that change?
So I'm gonna address that question. I want to address that question in a second. The short answer is, it doesn't prove anything to the world, but to that son or that daughter who now has closure and some objective reason that they can point to as to, this is why my young father of 60 has passed, because at 60 years old you shouldn't be dying. I think that would be exceptionally powerful in helping the son and the daughter and the family have closure, because now they have a real reason as to why their beloved father is gone. Fuck the world and the perception of, you don't have to tell the world the reasons. I would still want to know, so that, and you might say, how does it change anything? It might not change anything but that one person's life, the son and the daughter and the family's lives, that they now have closure, and they can point to a real reason why their father is no longer on this planet. I think that's important enough.
I think the most interesting movie quote ever is in The Matrix when he says, "I know the stake isn't real, but he still wants to be put in." What do you do if you know the truth? Now what? You've actually made it harder for yourself. You'll never get closure if you know the truth.
So let me take that. Let's pull on that yarn. And if we pull on that yarn, have you not heard of stories, Matt, where a man or a woman had a traumatic experience in their early childhood or early life or maybe early adulthood? And that traumatic experience, because they researched and they did diligence, that traumatic event turned them into the zealot, turned them into the promoter, turned them into the influencer, turned them into the operator or the entrepreneur to solve that problem or to improve the world, because they were so scammed, or because they went through so much suffering, or because they were rug pulled, or because they realized that the world is not the way it's supposed to be. And so when people say, what's the point of finding out the truth when nothing's going to happen? I say wrong. It could be exactly the impetus. It could be exactly the red pill. It could be exactly what that individual needs to find purpose in life, to maybe fundamentally change the world for the better for the rest of us because they went through that suffering and that experience.
So I agree. If you are the 1% of people that are able to achieve that, the other 99% of the people who go down that same road go further into dark holes, go further into depression, go further into the whole world is against me, go the other way. You're talking about...
You're speaking from experience?
You're talking about the very select few that are able to overcome the heaviness of what you've learned and be able to turn that into opportunity. But that's a very small select few people. So if you're just a average guy trying to make ends meet, trying to figure out how to navigate through the world, and you already don't feel like you can make a difference, is this road for you?
I'm gonna challenge you, and maybe this is actually a powerful revelation to our audience of my mental models and my natural disposition. Is my answer to you would be absolutely yes, because that could be the catalyst for turning that beta ass male, that beta ass cuck, into an actual man.
Okay. Now,
And maybe that's my personal grounding of how I see the world. It's like, you're going to suffer? Good. Welcome to the fucking show. Like, life is about suffering.
okay, let's take this from the perspective of Damar Hamlin. Okay. You can be the 1% that tells the truth, goes deep down to figure out what really happened, try to educate the world, or you could shut up,
Take the paycheck?
and take the money. Now what do you do?
That's what I asked you.
Exactly.
You didn't answer yet. Would you take the money?
It's not easy. You can either risk the life of your entire family, all the money and work that you've done for your entire life leading up to this point can be stripped away from you. You go back into poverty, and not just you, but your mom, your dad, your wife, your second wife, third wife, your fourth wife.
Your fourth wife?
Right? You all go back into poverty.
If I was that fourth wife, I would have dropped his ass a long time ago.
Or all you got to do is just play along. Do 2 interviews and enjoy Dancing with the Stars. You can be world famous, and we'll push you as a positive person, as a likable person. You can have influence over the world, or you can go this lonely road by yourself. And then it becomes a very difficult decision.
So are you saying that if you were Damar Hamlin and you were given that option,
Burn that shit down. But that's just me.
burn that shit down?
That's just me. I think the fact that we're having this conversation in this setting proves that we are that people. The fact that I have people out there that contact me and say, Matt, I don't know if you talk about this stuff. Like, what are you trying to change? Those people, they should take the money because they're not going to make it anyway.
Fair enough.
Going this road of truth, going this road to try be this 1%, it's a fucking lonely, dark, long
It's a lonely
road.
island for sure.
It's not for everybody. And if you think you can do it, it's not for you. You have to know that that's who you are to the core. And I think that's a very few people that do it. And everyone that's gone that road has been labeled crazy, has been labeled a conspiracy theorist, has been labeled a traitor,
Oh, yeah.
has been labeled everything.
Pretty much everything in the book.
Exactly. And we've already seen it. And the more they publicly shame people for going that road, it makes it harder for those other people that are on the fence to make that decision.
So what you guys are staring at and listening to, guys, is the future version of the Asian Andrew Tate. Right here, guys. There you go. Will had it queued up. He knew I was going to drop on that. There you go, guys. Burn that shit down. I'm in 100% agreement with you.
It's not easy, though.
Burn that shit down. Burn it down. And
But knowing that you may have to sacrifice your family to do it.
fair enough. I think that is a potential logical extreme within the entire spectrum of possibilities.
Correct.
The way that I would look at it is 100% like you. burn the shit down. However, being an entrepreneur and an operator and a problem solver that you are, I know that you and I likewise, even though we would say, well, let's burn the shit down, we would find ways, because we're assertive, because we're initiative, because we're problem solvers, we would find ways to leverage that for good. And ideally, we would figure out ways to leverage that and monetize it, because our life has just been turned into a shitstorm, and we're gonna have to make money somehow.
Exactly.
So Daily Wire, that's where we say, hey, Daily Wire, I just dropped it. I just said, burn the shit down. You guys need to give me an $80 million contract to talk about conservative talk radio. So I mean, like, that's the way that I'd see it too. Is that, you know, burn the ships, let everybody know. I think for me, it's the fact that I don't know if I would be able to sleep at night. Knowing that it is ridiculously obvious that I sold out. I think that would be the thing that would really make it hard for me to sleep at night, to not have cognitive dissonance, and the fact, like one of the worst parts about moving from being a child to an adult is one of the things that I realize is that I have to, like, life is so much easier when I'm honest.
Correct.
Like, just rip the fucking Band-Aid off.
Reduce suffering.
Yeah.
And lying is suffering.
Lying is complete suffering. And you and I probably harken back to multiple times in our youth as younger men when we made that one lie or that one fib. It wasn't a big deal at the time. Maybe it was just a slight exaggeration. But the fact that it was brought up a couple months later and you forgot what you said, right, because it was a flippant comment or something like that, and then someone's questioning you like, wait, but you told me this the other way last time, but you're telling me this time now. Like, that shit ruins my peace.
Yeah.
It ruins my peace.
And that
I don't ever want to have to, like, one of the things I love about this podcast, can I just say, is once you and I are done this podcast, I don't worry about what I said. And the reason I don't worry about what I said is I know that I'm in good company, people who want the best for me and my family. We're trying to do a thing here. We're trying to speak the truth, our observations of the world around us. And I can be at peace knowing that what I said is my truth. It might not be right.
Correct. We could be wrong.
It could be completely wrong. And you guys could look at Matt and I and say, you guys are completely out of your mind. I've lost all respect for you because you said X, Y, and Z. It's like, all right, go fuck off. Fine.
It's okay to be wrong.
It's okay to be wrong.
We're just talking.
And so for
We're having
me,
conversations.
I think if I was in a Damar Hamlin situation, I don't think I could live with myself daily knowing that people are looking at me being like, bro, I saw your interview. Like, you hesitated like a motherfucker. Like, we know you got paid off. We know you work for the Illuminati now.
You know, and again, that's him with access to all these really, all the best doctors in the world.
Yeah.
Everyone flooded in and sent it in on this guy.
You know they told him all the deets.
What if you're a guy who's not him? You don't have access to all these doctors. Your access to doctors is the one local doctor nearby. And they tell you it's from soda. Now what do? How much are you willing to spend of your own personal money to meet with all these other specialist doctors to get to your own truth? It's a long road there too, to even find out what's going on.
It's a long road, and I will tell you, based on my experience, that a serious man who is serious about the longevity of his health, because it's the only thing that we really have, health is actually the number one priority for wealth. Like, if you want wealth, you need health.
Unless you're Bill Gates.
Fair enough. That slob can walk around with his gut hanging out, looking like absolute garbage. Telling everybody else they need to be healthy. But like, I think, and here's my point, I think for someone who's serious about their health and wants to get down to the answer, they would still do it, because they're like, I don't believe you. There's no way that I fell over, eating at this restaurant and you're telling it's the bubbly soda that caused this. If you're serious about your health, you will still research it, I think.
You need to,
I know I would.
You need to get answers. But the problem is that will your search result in actual answers? Or will you just be constantly put in circles? In which case, it could drive you crazy.
It could.
Going from doctor to doctor, trying to find a truth that's not out there.
But see, that's the way that I look at that struggle, Matt. The way that I look at that is what is required for the hardening of manhood. Like, go through it. lean into that issue. Become a fucking man. Be personally responsible and understand your world around you. Understand what's happening to you. Don't like what sheep do is they accept what they get and they follow the crowd. A personally responsible man, in juxtaposition to that metaphor, is someone who doesn't follow the crowd and says, "Look, you're telling me a load of shit. You're telling me that I fell over because of the bubbly. Get out of town. That's not true." I think this is the catalyst. These are catalyst opportunities for these men to take personal responsibility for their life and say, you know what? I need to find the truth about what's going on with me. It might not change the world, but at the end of the day, your world isn't out there. Your world is here.
Again, I agree with you. However, just to strawman the argument, at what cost? How much money? You have a family, you have children. How much can you invest into what maybe seem like, a wild goose chase?
Could be. Certainly.
You could end up spending months, years, unlimited money. And at what point are you sacrificing the well-being of your family in order to find something that you may never find the answer to? In which case, is it better to just not even start?
I think this is a great question to posit to someone who's had a life-threatening illness. Because...
Well, I think there's going to be people here that are watching or listening that may have gone to something similar, maybe thinking the same thing. Like, I feel like this is why it happened. But for me to find the truth, I don't have the resources. And I have to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
I need to make money. I have 2 kids. I have a wife at home. I have a mortgage. I have car payments. I'm all into it. I have to pay my Netflix bill, right? I have all this stuff I got to pay for.
Yep.
How many days off can I go to go see specialists that may tell me, we don't know.
It wasn't the bubbly, it was the bubble gum, right?
We don't know.
Yeah.
And do these doctors even know? Because the doctors that we trust on, doctors basically these days do their best guess based on their own personal experience and what they've read. That's what a doctor does. A doctor that's why when you see one doctor and you get the diagnosis, they say, go somewhere for another opinion.
Yep.
They say the word opinion. They're letting you know that they have no fucking clue.
Yep.
It's their opinion. But for some reason, we take people's opinions as fact, which is not true. Because again, they don't say, go find your fact from someone else. They say, go get a second opinion.
Exactly.
That's what it is. And we rely on it to be true. And we assume that because a doctor told us that's what it is. I don't think that most doctors are intentionally trying to lie to you. They make their opinion based on the information that they have.
Yes.
And if they have limited information, they're just guessing. But maybe
100.
their guess may be a little more educated than yours because they've at least studied it. They're in the field.
Yes.
But again, they're just doing their own opinion. And if they have not been able to study the adverse reactions, if this is not something a part of their study, because it wasn't 20 years ago when they first went to medical school.
Nope.
If this is not something that they're actively a part of, how can they accurately assess it? So even if you saw 100 doctors, but they have no experience in this, would you ever get a real answer anyway?
Never.
When I was thinking about this, I spoke to a friend of mine in California who's a doctor. And I was telling him this story, and this is what he told me. This is exactly what he said. I currently have over 550 patients, and the cardiologist confirmed post-vaccination myocarditis and pericarditis, and there are more coming in daily. In the 20 years I've practiced, I had less than 10 patients with myocarditis or pericarditis up to 2021.
So he has seen the massive increase in these particular illnesses.
He's had 10 patients of this heart problem in 20 years. 10.
Now he's seeing
550 currently.
That's crazy.
That's a huge jump.
Yeah, that's more than the 130% that we saw in that article.
Correct.
Holy smokes. And that report that you got firsthand from a friend that you know is not unlike many other reports of many other doctors. I can tell you from my experience, I have doctors in my network who are reporting the same.
Yes.
That they're seeing new spikes in interesting illnesses that were not, let's just say, as common or prevalent before the 2020 to 2021 time period.
And a part of me says it's what we all kind of obviously think it is.
Yeah.
The other part is maybe
it's climate change. Greta Thunberg told us 5 years ago that the world was going to end in about 3 months. 5 years ago, didn't she tweet that? Did you see that?
I saw she
Did you see
deleted
that?
it.
I'm sorry I brought that up. I just had to bring that up. Sorry, Will.
I don't know, because could it be a change in of everyone's diet?
Well,
Could it
I
be
also
change
heard it
in-
was because we have too much sun. We're getting too much sun.
Could it be that we are be given maybe they've changed something in our food supply that we don't know of, that we're not aware of? Like, it's hard to say it's exactly what we think it is, because while they're doing all of this, they could have changed other things in the background that we never even knew.
That's true. All I know is that
But we
this
do
year
know-
I've increased my percentage of eating bugs.
We do know that this wasn't common in our lifetime.
It wasn't.
That prior to 3 years ago, prior to the pandemic, that people were not just falling. This was not a thing. It just was not.
So do you think, I just have to run this by you, and I don't mind running it by you live. I have a tweet queued up in my Twitter, which I can show you the massive amounts of unpublished tweets, because these are from my brain. And it's always like, is this the silent part out loud? But I have a tweet in that it's in drafts that I have yet to send. And it basically says, has the world been poisoned? And do you think tweeting something like that is too egregious and it sends the wrong message? Let me ask you that live.
No, because there are multiple ways to read that. Have we been poisoned by drugs? Have we been poisoned by
So
media?
it's generic enough.
Have we been poisoned by social causes that don't actually matter to most people? Have we been poisoned by government influence? Have we been? There are a million ways to read that,
Yeah, there is a million ways to read that. Have we been poisoned? Has the world been poisoned?
and I think depending on what is important to the person reading at that time is how they're going to take it.
Exactly. Maybe that's why the generic version of that is so good.
I like that, because have we?
If we stick within the context of what we've been talking about just in the last 5 minutes or so, and we say, has the world been poisoned? Do you think, would you agree with that statement?
But why?
Maybe let's just
why would we be poisoned? Because poison has a certain amount of intent in the
yeah.
word.
Well, if you're poisoned, the intention of being poisoned is eventually you're no longer living and breathing activity in this spectral realm that we live in.
And the reality is why?
Oh, it's very simple. I'll give you the answer.
You can't say that.
No, you don't know what I'm going to say.
No, you can't
don't know
say
what
it.
I'm going to
No,
say.
you're not allowed to say that.
I'm going to say, guys.
YouTube's gonna say
Here's
no.
what I'm going to say,
No,
guys. It is far.
cut.
It is far easier. Let me ask a rhetorical question.
Yes.
That way I won't have to say anything.
Okay.
Here's the question.
Okay.
Is it easier to coach a 6-year-old soccer game with 20 kids, or is it easier to coach a 6-year-old soccer game with 5 kids?
Because there is the idea that we have limited resources on this earth.
Just answer the fucking
Not
question,
enough.
Matt. Is it easier to coach 26-year-olds or 5 6-year-olds?
It's easier if you have a finite amount of juice boxes. It is easier to give those juice boxes to 5 people
and those orange slices
instead of 20. You only have 5 juice boxes, right?
Okay.
And you have 20 kids.
Well played.
What do? Only 5 kids get it.
Well, yeah, the other
Or you got to make your team smaller.
Yeah, well, if you only have 5 juice boxes and you have 20 kids, it's very easy. You remove the other 15 kids. I was going to say another word that would have been really not safe for work. Yeah, you just need to, let's just say, just disappear those 15 kids.
I think it's important that we have these conversations. And obviously, a lot of it is serious. Some of what we say is in jest. But it's important to have these conversations. I found it extremely concerning that there were so many doctors, scientists, virologists, immunologists, people who specialize in this field were silenced for so long that they were not allowed to argue their side because there's so many of them. I mean, thousands of doctors are like, bro, this does not seem right. And the doctors that say, oh, this is normal, Like, wait, why is it normal? Be like, because it is. Like, that's like the worst argument ever.
Exactly.
And you have the other side, which are silenced, and they're like, well, it's not right because this and A and B and C and C. And if you look at D and it correlates to B and C, like, and their argument is pretty sound and very in depth.
Right.
And the argument for is because we told you. And people are like, oh, those guys who did all this research, who spent countless hours putting together this argument, they don't know what they're talking about. But these guys who just retweeted, they're experts.
Yep. Exactly.
And it's really concerning that was the case. People are coming out, having these conversations. Again, I go back to the fact that Twitter has done a really good job of letting people have these conversations, bringing back this whole public forum type idea.
The public square is good for us.
Correct. But even now, as we try to put this onto YouTube, we have to dance. And in their terms of service and what can ban you, etc.
Matt said that he literally read the TOS.
I read the whole thing. And on the bottom, it says, oh, these rules and standards are from 2021. They say that so that they say, we haven't updated yet.
Oh, okay.
'Cause
So we're still under the 2021 regime where you can't talk about any of the stuff that we're technically talking about.
correct.
I see.
So they have not updated their rules and regulations around medical misinformation.
Which is fascinating because
Because they could have done it in 3 days. if they really wanted to.
Oh, totally. Well, what I find to be a non-starter with that argument of misinformation is you have two knuckleheads, us, who are not medical experts,
Not at all.
giving an observation, let's just say color commentary on observations of our experience.
Correct.
You didn't have that experience. I had that experience with the go-karting kid who's no longer here. Matt had the experience with his friend who fell over in a restaurant. These are not made-up experiences. These are real experiences. We're just two homies talking about our experiences. How can that be labeled as misinformation? That is the non-starter argument that I've always had with this misinformation nonsense and bullshit, is that, like, we're just talking about life. We could be talking about Lambos and supercars. And they'd say, oh, you mischaracterize a Lambo so you can... Come on.
Yeah.
Come
But hopefully this episode does go live. I don't know. Maybe we're talking to ourselves today. It's very possible.
This could end up being one of those behind the scenes that only Discord members who join the Matt Kim's Discord club get access to.
But these are conversations that we're all having at home.
True.
These are all thoughts that we are all having privately.
Absolutely.
And we should be able to have it publicly. We do it on your behalf so that you can spur thought, right? Yeah. To be able to have these, be like, hey, I saw Matt and Peter talk about this. And you know what? I want to have the same conversation.
I like that. I like that theme, Matt. I like the fact that, and it's not to say that we're better than anybody or anything like that. I like the fact that you're calling out the model that we're trying to live, which is you and I are willing to have it publicly. And so for those who are listening, I think it's a good encouragement that they too can have these conversations. They don't need to be scared about it.
If we're having it publicly, the least you can do is have it privately.
Least.
Just question what's going on because it smells, man.
It does.
You know?
It does.
And I don't, would people label us conspiracy theorists?
I think maybe 18 months ago, yeah, they would have labeled us conspiracy. But I think...
Are we extremists?
I mean, you caught me there for a second. What you just said literally didn't compute. Because my context was thinking we're just talking about our experiences, and by talking about our experiences, that make us extremists. That it didn't compute in my head for a second.
For the first time, I stumped Peter's computer brain.
It didn't compute. I was like, it doesn't make any sense. So the short answer is no. Just the fact that we're talking about our experiences in life does not make us extremists, but it begs the question and brings up an issue. Is the world of content in YouTube and video and these types of things, are they seeing now personal experiences as misinformation, as conspiracy? That's making that bridge from, hey, this is your opinion, this is your personal experience of something that you witnessed and saw, is now conspiracy. That is a really brittle bridge. That's a really brittle argument to have because I think it's easily debunked and broken.
And we're told that the conversations we have are controversial.
That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me that we're in 2023. We have moved past the medieval days of the Scarlet Letter when they couldn't talk about showing a dress from the knees up because that's sexual. To now, you and I are talking openly online on YouTube, and we're talking about our experiences and Rumble, right? And Spotify. Yeah, and yet now we're not allowed to talk about these things. Like I feel like the progressivism has kind of dematerialized before our very eyes. Like, aren't we supposed to, isn't this what progressivism is all about? Is we're supposed to be talking about the things that are going on in the world?
It used to be until they didn't agree with what you said.
Oh, if we're not playing to the narrative, I suppose.
We'll continue this next week.
Absolutely. Make sure that you guys check out Matt Kim Podcast on Discord. That's where you guys can see all the extra juju and talk about all this stuff behind closed doors in a safe place for your delicate vagina.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. I like this outro too. It feels good.
Because we're getting banned.
Are we getting banned? Is that where we're walking out with the casket?